today we're going to talk about some herb stuff, and that's all we're going to talk about, which is hopefully going to be fun. So first, let's give you a little bit of, just sort of general overview of what we're going to touch on today. So there's what's called the 4 Qi, and those are, you call it temperature or whatever you want to call it. And but of course there's 5 here because neutral's been added. And I'm not really going to talk about neutral too much during the class today, but I may touch on it here or there. So it's the scale from cold, cool, neutral, warm, hot. This is not really any different, or not very, very different from anything like, say, Parkinson or Gerard or Culpeper talked about. They just used, warm or hot in the 3rd degree or hot in the 1st degree or whatever, rather than this scale like this. So very similar. And then there's the 5 flavors: acrid, sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and then there's these 2 others that have been added later on. That's astringent and bland. And there's actually another one that's not here. That's aromatic. So I should really include that in there as well. So these sort of additions came later in, historically later in Chinese medicine, and don't really fit the nicely neat neat theoretical construct that was developed in the Neijing. So that's okay. But these extra things, the astringent and bland and then aromatic I mentioned, just give us some more information. I think well, I'll touch on them as I go along here. So then there's the 4 directions, and we're going to talk about that a little bit less, but we're going to talk about that. And so there's upward, downward, floating, and sinking. And when you first look at those, you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? And then we'll talk about what those differences are. So all herbs are given these kind of assignments, especially the 4 Qi and the 5 flavors, plus the others. Those are critical in any materia medica that's written about Chinese herbs or written using Chinese medical theory. These first 2 categories are ascribed to all the herbs. The 4 directions are not usually ascribed in sort of the straight up monograph, and in that, like if you've ever looked at a materia medica, has the name of the plant, the part used, the herb is bitter, cold, and bitter, acrid, and cold, or something like that, and then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the 4 directions are usually more discussed within the body of the materia medica, and sometimes not mentioned at all. And that's mostly because it's only, or it's mostly only important when the herb is particularly strong or good at one of these actions. And then it's used to help direct the formula. And I'll talk about that when we get to that